So in the last video I published, I talked about 3 beginning Greek grammars and I compared the 3 of them. One of them was beginning with New Testament Greek, and I got a number of requests from people in the comments saying, hey, we'd love to see a fuller review of going deeper with New Testament Greek. So in this video, that's exactly what I'm going to do. Let's talk about going deeper with Greek, and I'll talk about what I like about it and why it's good, right? There's nothing wrong with it. Well, let's just get into it. I'll tell you on the way. Hey, welcome. I'm Daryl Burling from Master New Testament Greek, except it's not Master New Testament Greek anymore. We've just renamed this channel to the Master Biblical Languages channel. If you're interested in the languages generally, Greek and Hebrew, and you want to know more about that, hit the like button, and don't forget, if you haven't already done so, hit the subscribe button and the notify bell. Let's get into it. With that, then, let's talk about this grammar. Now, this grammar is actually, as you can see, the revised edition of Going Deeper with New Testament Greek. The first edition, I've also got the first edition here as well, and there's a little bit of a comparison between them. The first edition was published in 2016, and as you can see, it's written by Andreas Kostenberger, Benjamin Merkel, and Rob Plummer. Rob Plummer, of course, from the Daily Dose of Greek. Ben Merkel and Rob Plummer have been publishing a lot of books together, some of which you've probably read and I've reviewed on this channel, such as Greek for Life, which is better, and Beginning with New Testament Greek, their beginning Greek grammar, which this really follows on from. The other thing, Andreas Kostenberger has been involved in a lot of writing projects. He is a well-known scholar, and so this really is a grammar that is got some good and respected scholars behind it, all of whom have contributed at various levels throughout the academic world and are well worth following and being aware of their work. So the first edition, the original edition, 2016, this is literally, there's not a lot of difference between these two editions. The key thing to know is that the paper, really, one of the big differences between these, and the difference between the sizes, you can see the revised edition is not as thick, is really that the paper quality in the first edition was not as good as the paper quality in the new edition. It's a better quality paper, and so therefore, even though this is 12 pages longer than the original edition, it's actually thinner. So overall, this, I really prefer the presentation of this. It's a lot nicer to use. But when you come to buy this on Logos Bible Software, only the original edition is currently available in Logos Bible Software. Now, I don't know whether they're planning to release the updated edition or not. I haven't been told one way or another. I wouldn't be surprised if they did. Logos did this with, for instance, the John Schwantz grammar. They released the original edition, then they also released the second edition later on, just as an update. And it could be the same with this as well. They have the publishing rights to the Broadman and Holman material, or B&H publishes material, which this is a part of, so they could well go ahead and do that, but I just don't know for sure. This edition, the updated edition, was published in 2020, and really the difference between these comes down to the nature of the paper. There's a few little changes, there's a few more footnotes in this, but other than that, the content is largely unchanged. This is, if you've got the older version, you don't really need to upgrade to the newer version, unless of course you are in a seminary and they require you to, but for the most part you shouldn't need to. The content is much the same. Okay, so the revised edition is very similar to the original edition, but it's got more footnotes and this typeset just a little bit differently. Like I said, there are 12 pages more in this edition, which means that your pagination will be different. So page 181 covers the same material as about page 180 in this, and you'll find that it just gets further and further out of whack as you go through the grammar. Anyway, enough about the difference between those two editions. As we talk about these grammars in this video, I really want to address it from 3 different points of view. First of all, and most of all, and probably the bulk of what we'll talk about in this video will be, how does this work as a classroom grammar? This is uniquely set up as an intermediate classroom grammar, and I'm going to talk about that and really talk about where this grammar shines in this video. This is where we're going to spend most of the time today. But I'm also going to talk about it from the point of view of someone who is self-studying and also as a reference grammar. Okay, so let's talk about those 3 areas, starting really with just an overall understanding of this, where it kind of fits in the world of intermediate Greek grammars. The key thing to know here from an intermediate Greek grammar point of view is that really the intention of this is to help students come to grips with exegesis. Okay, that means how to study the Greek texts for themselves. Now that means then that this focuses very heavily on syntax, and while it does have it has exercises, in fact every chapter has an exercise related to reading the Greek New Testament, it's really designed around exegetical process and study and that kind of thing. And so that's great for what it is. And for most grammar and for most classroom environments, that's where this is going to be most useful. It takes a fairly conventional approach to syntax. It simplifies things a little bit. We'll talk about that in just a moment. It's more comprehensive than Wallace's Greek basics of New Testament syntax, which is the abridged version of his Greek grammar beyond the basics, but it's a little more verbose than something like Mathewson and Emig intermediate Greek grammar, which we discussed in our comparison last video. So overall, and beyond that, there's just a couple of little areas that I would differ in. I don't think there's any areas of concern in this grammar. I think overall it's a very good grammar. And while there are a couple of areas where I would kind of encourage them to push the envelope perhaps just a little bit more, I think where they're coming from and who they're trying to serve, this is a really well pitched grammar for the kind of student, the kind of teacher they're really trying to serve here. So overall, I think this is a good grammar, and I think it fits well. It's not going to be your full volume Moulton, Howard, and Turner. It's not going to be like your Robertson. It's not intended to be any of those. This is really designed to be a classroom grammar, which really sets it apart. There are very few other books that are related like this, that are designed for the classroom, really. The other one that I really think would compete with this is the one that I use in Master New Testament Greek, Intermediate Greek Grammar by David Mathewson and Elodie Ballantyne Emig. But that's not the subject of today's grammar. And if you're interested in my comparison of that, then check out this video just up here, which is the one I released last week, which compared all three of these grammars at a high level. So let's talk about why going deeper with New Testament Greek is an ideal classroom for an exegetical program inside a seminary. This is really designed as a classroom grammar, and this is really where it shines, as I mentioned earlier. There's a number of reasons why this is ideally suited for that, and the main one is that it's really well laid out to introduce students step by step through the grammar bit by bits, and as they go through, it's going to be well laid out. From a teacher's point of view, it's got clear chapter objectives at the beginning of each chapter. And this is something actually that I've noticed with Andreas Kostenberger's books generally, especially the ones designed for classrooms, they often will have these, this is what we're trying to achieve in this chapter. This book is exactly the same in that sense. So it's got good, clear chapter objectives. It's got very helpful summaries at the end of each chapter. And really, in this sense, this is really beneficial because there's a lot of syntactical categories, and at the end of each chapter, you get a list of them and a brief description. And in fact, these descriptions and summaries have been turned into a laminated chart, which you can download, which we can purchase rather, and just carry around, I guess, with one of these or something like that. And I'll leave a link to all of this, including a link to this grammar below in this in the description below, so you can go grab a copy there. And that includes the laminated chart as well. The other reason I think this is a really good grammar for classrooms is it's designed really for professors who are teaching using perhaps older grammars or grammars that might have a tense first approach to verbs or might be teaching deponent verbs. This updates that really well without pushing those professors fully into the verbal aspect world from a aspect only, no time point of view, and also allows them to maintain a teaching around deponency if they want to, although I think this has a better discussion around the middle voice than the old deponency approach does. So this is a good book for professors who want to kind of start to explore those things but aren't quite ready to fully embrace it yet. And there's other reasons why this is really good for professors as well. Namely, it includes a whole bunch of helps for the teacher. You don't get it in the grammar, but if you're interested and you're going to be teaching a class on this, then this grammar will include things like, you can go to deepergreek.com and you can download things like PowerPoint decks, teacher curriculum, that is syllabi, sample syllabi. There's a 3-week syllabi, a 14-week syllabi. There are chapter summaries there are vocabulary lists, there are answer keys, and all this sort of thing that you can download for free that goes with this, which means that if you're a professor and you're looking to teach using this, a lot of the work is done for you, and really all you need to do is download that material, make any changes you want to make, and you can do that very easily on a week-by-week basis. and then just get students to work through the material. It's very, very simple, and it's all there for you, which means that probably if you're about to teach a second year Greek class and you believe it's time for an updated grammar, then this is probably the grammar you want to go for. It's going to require less work than pretty much all the other grammars, and it's not going to push you as hard when it comes to things like deponency / middle voice and verbal aspect as well. In terms of what is actually teaching, you'll find in this grammar that it does give a very good overview of the exegetical processes without falling into some of the extremes that you find, say, in Greek grammar beyond the basics. One of the problems with Greek grammar beyond the basics is that you have this multiplication of categories, 32 categories of genitives, for instance. Well, again, going deeper with New Testament Greek recognizes the failing of that or the difficulty of that for students, and then provides much less of that. So you've got a descriptive genitive, for instance, that provides far fewer variations, and it really catches more, I guess, of those details, rather than actually multiplying out different forms of the genitive and asking students to remember those. So this simplifies the syntax for students, which I think is very helpful and makes it a lot easier for the student to understand the syntax without being overwhelmed. Not only does it give you a good overview of each of the grammatical kind of categories and gives you a good description and it gives you examples like you would expect, it also gives you a good little set of exercises that you can work through as well. Really, each chapter comes with 3 sets of exercises. It comes with, first of all, a simple translation and identification exercise, and in these what you're doing is you're looking at a piece of Greek text and you're identifying, for instance, the use of the article, how the article is being used in this particular verse. And of course you've got the chapter summaries, so it's easy for a student, if they're not sure, to go back and take a look and then work out how to identify that. It's also got the vocabulary. Now, in terms of classrooms, a lot of professors seem to like having students learn vocabulary down to 20 or 15 occurrences. This includes the vocabulary down to 15 occurrences as part of each chapter's exercises for each week, which means that as you go through the grammar and you go through a semester, you're going to be learning all the vocabulary down to 15 occurrences as well. From a classroom point of view, I think a lot of professors will that's kind of what they would do anyway, and it's all included in this. So the exercises in this grammar are very good, and they're more consistent than what you'll find in something like Wallace's Greek Grammar Beyond the Basics, which is really, in my opinion, much more of a reference grammar. So from a classroom point of view, you can see that this provides that consistency, it provides good coverage, it provides good exercises, it provides good helps for professors and teachers, which means that this is really an ideal grammar for the classroom for a second year Greek course. And again, I would recommend this for a one semester kind of sitting. So going through this in a single semester is a little bit challenging from a vocabulary point of view, but not overly difficult. I don't think you're learning more than about 25 words per week, which I think is pretty manageable for most students. Hey, let me just interrupt this for just a moment. If you're getting value out of this, could you hit the like button on this video? And if you haven't done so already, hit the subscribe button and the notify bell as well. Let's get back to it. So let's go on then to talk about this. If you're studying grammar for yourself, let's say you've finished beginning Greek on your own, you're a hero, because really you are, and you're looking at something to take you beyond beginning Greek. This is going to be, again, a really helpful grammar to help you do that. Now, first of all, let's talk briefly. If you're doing this from a self-study point of view, and you're wanting to grow your vocabulary, let me encourage you not to use the vocabulary in this grammar for that purpose. Now, if you're in a seminary and you're teaching students, then fine, use the vocabulary. I'm not trying to take away from that. I think it works well from a seminary or college point of view. But if you're doing self-study, I don't recommend the occurrence-based model of learning vocabulary. And the reason for that is that you're going to learn vocabulary potentially that you're going to use maybe once or maybe not at all for potentially months. So why learn that vocabulary? Why not instead learn the vocabulary you're going to use as you need to use it? So learn vocabulary, then read the text that vocabulary goes with, and then repeat. So go back over the next chapter or the next chapter. And that's what Master New Testament Greek does. And if you're interested in my approach to that, then you can check out the videos. I'll link a couple of videos up here so you can take a look at how I encourage you to do vocabulary, and also some of the differences between the way I do it and say they recommend it in this grammar, Greek for Life, and also Dan Wallace's own recommendations for ordering books as well. So you can find a bunch of videos linked up here, which I encourage you to go check out. In terms of going through the exercises in this, as I mentioned before, the same is true for professors as for students. You can download the answer key for this and go through it. So my encouragement would be go through the questions in this, see how you go, write out your translations, do your reading from this, write out any things you've got questions about, and then go on and download the answer key and check out how did you go. Don't look at the answer key before you do the exercises. Do the exercises, download the answer key, and then check your answers after you've finished all the exercises. And the reason I say that is because if you don't do that, you're not going to make mistakes. And making mistakes and getting it wrong is going to help you learn better than just getting it right by following the answers. So do the exercises and the grammar, download the answer key, check your exercises, do it that way. That way I think you'll learn a lot more, especially if you're asking yourself, well, why did I get that wrong? That's really where that learning process kicks in. So if you're learning this on your own, you've got plenty of helps. It's going to be very, very helpful to allow you to be able to work through this on your own. That brings us then to the last use case, and really that means where does this fit from the point of view of using it as a reference grammar? Well, it's very good as a reference grammar. Again, one of its strengths is it's got a very, very good scripture index at the back here. So if you're looking at a particular text, you can go to see if this has addressed that anywhere in the grammar, in the index at the back. Of course, if you've got the Logos edition, you can just do a search for that very quickly and very easily through the Logos edition. That's nice and easy. But also it gives you plenty of syntactical categories and examples to work through. Not as many as you'll get in Wallace, but certainly enough to come to your own conclusions about, is this really the sort that I'm using here? The other thing I think that really helps here from the point of view of this grammar, if you're using it as a reference grammar, is that it's going to give you those summaries, which means that you don't even have to go through and look at the actual text. You can just skip to the end of each chapter, say on tense and aspect, and you can look at all the different categories they give you there, and you can say, okay, which one of these really fits the bill, and it's going to even give you a couple of example verses as well to look at and see if that's the case. So as a reference grammar, I'd say this is pretty good. In some ways, it's kind of better than Mathewson and Emig, but it's not as good, again, as you get, say, with Wallace, which has got more categories and more explanations, and I think more distinctions as well, which really I think does help you. He's also in Wallace. The other thing that makes Wallace, I think, a little better from a reference grammar is that Wallace goes down a number of kind of exegetical and theological rabbit holes at times, which are really engaging and really helpful, particularly around certain subjects. Now, the strength of going deeper is that you don't do that, and that's a strength if you're using it as a classroom grammar. But as a reference grammar, not having some of those discussions will actually be a little bit of a hindrance, but then of course you can always go get Wallace and you've got those discussions there. So that's it for my views on going deeper. If you've used this grammar in a classroom or just for yourself, I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Let me know what you think of this grammar. Is this a grammar you've used? What did you think of it? Share your comments below. Look forward to hearing from you there. If you're interested in learning Greek, if you've never done this before, or if you've done it and you want to go a little further, go download my roadmap to mastery at masterntgreek.com/roadmap. I'd love to be able to serve you and help you to learn the language of the New Testament in the way that the Lord originally inspired it. Thanks again for watching. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Until then, keep taking small, consistent steps toward mastery. I'll see you then.